How Andrew Jackson dealt with the Native Americans. The actions of the government when Andrew Jackson was president destroyed the homeland and lives of Native Americans. President Jackson had been elected by Western farmers living next to a Native American lands, partly because he had become their hero as a fierce Indian fighter. President Jackson knew he could please the people who voted for him by supporting their demands for Native American lands. Cherokee worldviews. The Cherokee was a tribe that had adapted to American culture, and until the 1820s, they were able to keep most of their land. The Cherokee had adapted many American cultural customs. One of their leaders, Sequoyah, had developed a Cherokee alphabet. So many Cherokee learned to read and write that they began a newspaper, the Cherokee Phoenix, which printed its articles in both Cherokee and English. Most Cherokee had converted to Christianity. The Cherokee adopted written laws and a democratic constitution modeled after the U.S. Constitution. By the 1820s, many members of the tribe were children of marriages between settlers and the Cherokee. Most of these racially mixed people owned farms and small stores. A few owned cotton plantations and African American slaves. The Cherokee tribe had also helped Andrew Jackson defeat the Creek tribe during the War of 1812. Although Cherokee society had become very similar to white society, white settlers still wanted to take Cherokee lands for themselves. The settlers became more insistent after gold was discovered on Cherokee lands in Georgia. Not long after President Jackson took office, the state of Georgia claimed the right to take over Cherokee lands. The Cherokee went to federal court to fight against the state of Georgia. The Cherokee showed in court the treaty they had signed with the federal government that recognized their ownership of the land. The Cherokee and their lawyer took the case all the way to the Supreme Court. Chief Justice John Marshall and the Supreme Court agreed that the Cherokee had the right to keep their land. However, President Jackson refused to use his power as president to carry out the court's decision and simply let Georgia take the lands of the Cherokee. It would have been very unpopular to take the side of the Native Americans in those days. In fact, President Jackson was reported to have said, John Marshall has made his decision, now let him enforce it. Because of checks and balances, the Supreme Court can only judge whether a law is legal or not legal. Only the president can enforce the law. After the War of 1812, the government had officially adopted a policy of Indian removal, meaning that all Native Americans would be taken from their lands east of the Mississippi River and put onto reservations on the Great Plains. That policy was considered the solution to the problem of constant warfare between Native Americans and the white settlers who wanted their land. The policy was not made into law until Andrew Jackson supported the idea of Indian removal, and Congress passed the Indian Removal Law in 1830. During the 1830s, the Indian Removal Law forced 5 tribes, the Cherokee, Creek, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Seminole, to give up most of their land in the east for new land west of the Mississippi River. Other tribes were also forced to relocate. Native Americans were hurt by resettlement to different lands. All of those Native American tribes had lived, fished, farmed, hunted, and gathered in the same basic area for centuries. Much of their religion was rooted in the particular geographic features of their homeland. All of their knowledge of how to live in harmony with the environment and how to accommodate to the environment was specific to the area where they lived. They had no knowledge of the game, the plants, or how to live in a completely different environment. It is difficult to imagine the terrible effect of removing the Native Americans from their homeland. It was much greater a punishment than it would have been to the whites, who had no such specific tie to the land and the environment. The Seminole tribe in Florida decided to fight. Rewind. The Cherokee and the other tribes did not want to move, but they had no choice. Over a period of several years, the United States Army forced about 60,000 Native Americans out of their homes in the East at gunpoint. The long, unhappy journey of the Cherokee and the other tribes to areas west of the Mississippi River became known as the Trail of Tears. The Native Americans were forced to march hundreds of miles in poor weather with little food or shelter. Thousands of people starved. Others died of sickness or froze to death. The Seminole tribe in Florida decided to fight rather than be removed from their land. They fought a 7-year war with the United States Army. Thousands of men died on both sides. Finally, in 1842, the Seminoles were defeated and forced to leave their homelands and move west of the Mississippi River onto the prairies. With the defeat of the Seminoles, only a few thousand Native Americans were left alive east of the Mississippi River. For 30,000 years, until the arrival of Europeans, millions of Native Americans had lived in that area. The people's rights problems of Native Americans are discussed more in Chapter 11. Summary. President Jackson and the Democratic Party caused terrible problems for Native Americans. The problem was white settlers would not stop taking Native American lands. The solution for the United States Army to force the Native Americans off their land to areas west of the Mississippi River. The effect was that by 1838, only a few Native Americans were left alive east of the Mississippi River.